Is our good friend Dr. Dennis Norem from Mercy Health, who's been with us every step of the way throughout the COVID-19 pandemic and is with us once again this morning. So not too homesick for Arizona with this kind of stuff, right, Dr. Norem?
Not yet. This is very tolerable, actually very similar to what Arizona weather is now. High 60s, low 70s, getting down in the 30s, somewhat 40s at night. So I'll take this for a week.
Is this kind of weather better for people in that, we all flock indoors when things get a whole lot colder, and that's when things begin to spread a little bit more? The more temperate we can keep it, the better off we are?
Well, I think the more time we can spend outside, obviously, I think the better off we are. Unfortunately, probably a week of warmer weather is not going to make a whole lot of difference. As you know, anytime you get a little benefit, it turns the other way and goes to the cold end. So we'll see how long this lasts.
Yeah, always a price to be paid. Over the weekend, you got Dr. Fauci saying that Americans are just going to, quote, just going to have to deal with the prospect of getting more coronavirus booster shots. Made the statement Sunday morning, said the level of protection the current coronavirus booster shots give to individuals will have to be monitored closely over the next several months.
Yeah, unfortunately, this new Omicron variant seems to be more resistant to the basic two-shot immunization series. And it's pretty clear that the boosters elevate our antibody levels significantly, 20, 25 times. So in order for us to be a little more protected against the variant, we're going to have to all get boosters. So this is probably going to be something that's an ongoing issue. I know we talked last week a little bit about how often we're going to need boosters. I don't think anybody knows, but I think it's pretty clear down the road that we're going to need boosters.
Are we to a point yet, especially the Omicron? Am I saying that one right? Omicron.
Omicron.
We'll use Omicron for this show. Are we to the point with the Omicron variant where we're going to start adjusting our boosters, or is it still too early for that?
It's a little too early. I see Pfizer estimates they'll have a specific shot to the Omicron ready by March, but it's not clear whether we're going to need it yet. There's that one issue of if we start using just a booster just to the Omicron, will that be too narrow in terms of overall immunity? So if another variant comes along that's maybe a lot less similar to the Omicron, it may not be as effective. So it's kind of all up in the air, but clearly it's good that the pharmaceutical companies have a specific vaccine in mind for the variant as we move forward.
I think one of the interesting things, too, is that Omicron seems to be, according to what I'm looking at here, spreading faster than the currently dominant Delta variant, and some vaccines offer less protection against it. However, it doesn't seem to be doing as much damage.
Oh, absolutely. I see the UK reporting their first death, which is a little bit disturbing, but in terms of the numbers of people with the Omicron, that's really kind of reassuring in a way. Also, the data coming out of South Africa shows that their cases are already leveling off in the last few days. So this Omicron variant has really shot up very quickly. It's more contagious, but it also may go away much quicker. And it appears so far to be less virulent. People just aren't as sick. There aren't as many hospitalizations. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes as we move forward over the next couple of weeks.
I know we've discovered at least a few cases of Omicron here in Illinois. Is it still too early to know if we have a major Omicron outbreak here in the state, or when will we know that?
I will probably know that in the next week or two. I mean, I think everybody assumes, since it's already in 30 states and it's that we know of, and it's probably in all 50 states, we just haven't quite verified that yet, that it's going to become the predominant variant over the next several weeks. I think that's pretty obvious that that's where we're heading.
I'm looking at, we look at what different nations are doing at different times, and we look with great interest at what Austria was doing a few weeks ago, which was a lockdown restriction for unvaccinated people across the country. 3 weeks they kept that rule in place. That has been suspended as of Sunday. largely allowing for the reopening of theaters, museums, and other cultural and entertainment venues starting yesterday. Shops will follow in Austria today. I didn't see any numbers saying that that lockdown had any success whatsoever. I saw where there were some very upset Austrians, but after 3 weeks, we're pulling the plug on it. But I don't see anyone declaring victory.
Yeah, I think lockdowns probably haven't done much. I mean, there's idea that in this society across the world that we can isolate people and quarantine them and keep them, at home or keeping them in their own country really hasn't worked very well. Look what happened with the Omicron issue. We were going to limit travel and all that. Well, it was already here. It was too late. It was everywhere. Having said that, though, people still need, if they're ill or exposed, need to quarantine themselves to try to slow down the spread. But I think this idea that we can lock down a city, a town, a state, it just doesn't work.
Do we know yet if Omicron, I think we do know is more transmissible than some of the other variants. Do we know a breakdown between vaccinated and non-vaccinated? If one of the other groups is passing it more easily, and did vaccines do anything to prevent transmission before, like with the Delta variant?
Well, I think the vaccines still slowed down transmission. We don't know yet. I haven't seen any particular numbers to say that with just your basic vaccination 2-dose regime, that you're X number of times more likely to pick up the Omicron variant versus the Delta. I haven't seen those kind of numbers. I think it's been more of a qualitative thing, saying that it looks like the Omicron is more contagious, and even though you've been vaccinated, you're still more likely to get it. But it'll be interesting to see if some studies start popping up to give some better numbers or percentages on that.
One word I haven't heard a lot of recently, that we heard quite a bit of at the beginning of the pandemic, was asymptomatic positive tests. Is that still a concern? I just haven't heard that word bandied about like we used to.
No, you don't.
No, you don't see nearly as much of that, do you? I've seen some. It's been a while. I've seen a couple of studies that said that asymptomatic carriers who were positive tests may be 40%, 50%, maybe as high as 60% in some instances. But that's the kind of number I'm kind of looking for with this new Omicron variant, to see if somebody's got some numbers on that. I think it's difficult to tell now because so many of us have been vaccinated. There's the Delta floating around now. There's the Omicron. It's going to be hard to separate all that out. And then you're going to ask, well, can you get infected with both of them at the same time? Who knows? That'll be interesting to see.
And do we know yet if you've tested positive, for a Delta variant? Do you still have that natural immunity towards other variants, or do we not know that yet?
Well, we would assume you do, but again, I haven't seen a study on that. But you would assume, because we know that natural immunity in a lot of people is very good. It's more variable than I think the vaccine immunity. And we do know that if you have had COVID and you get the vaccine after COVID, that's the best protected group of anybody. That gets the best antibody response of any combination. But again, I haven't seen a specific study. I think you're going to see some things come out clearly pointed towards how that affects your immunity against the Omicron virus.
Be interested to get your take on this one. I saw the Associated Press had a story on this guy over the weekend, a guy named Dr. Uman Imadi, who is a PhD research scientist. He believes the latest variant, or he says the latest variant, Omicron, could bring about the end of the pandemic sooner. He said that the Omicron variant, based on the reports from South Africa, could be highly infectious, yet cause little disease, meaning that many people around the globe could be exposed and develop antibodies that would provide protection from future variants.
Well, that's an optimistic outlook, and there is some data, as we've talked about, already seeing the fact that in South Africa their cases are leveling off and maybe starting to head downward. Being more contagious should squeeze out the other variants, including Delta, and it being less virulent, that would be a good thing. Maybe people the vast majority would have very mild symptoms or be asymptomatic. That might bring this part of the wave to an end. That always begs the question, what's the next mutant going to do?
Right. But it doesn't hurt to be optimistic with this one.
No, we need some optimism. We've been at this too long.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Swinging back to boosters, and pardon me if I don't always trust pharmaceutical companies. They have
What?
Yeah, they have a little bit of a track record, Riles, of that. We really only hear, well, 3 here in the States. Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and AstraZeneca in Europe. So it seems to me, from an outsider, there's 4, companies looking at it. Are there any other drug manufacturers looking at developing a vaccine, or do they have any access to some of the studies that these companies have been doing? Is there a collective kind of conversation going on to get somebody else into the game?
I haven't seen anything recently on this. At the beginning, there was clearly this idea that all these companies were cooperating. There are several other countries, we know China, India are 2 examples, and Russia that have their own vaccines. I think even Cuba has its own vaccine. But I haven't seen much data, and I haven't seen any comparative data to know how do those vaccines compare to what we are using in the United States. So we're kind of going with the big 3, and I think there's another one that's going to be submitted for approval here pretty soon in the United States. I can't remember the name of it, but there may be a 4th one. But that's probably going to be about it for our country. But again, worldwide, there's several companies and countries that are developing their own.
Do we not see those studies because there's just not big enough sample size, or you listed some countries there that aren't always forthcoming with information?
There's your answer right there.
I mean, is that the reason?
Well, I think the reason is just sort of the whole way this is rolled out. The United States and countries such as Israel decided to work with Pfizer, Moderna on the messenger RNA because that seemed to be technologically the most promising way to go. We already had the technology, and that was the direction we headed. So I think because the results were so good, there just wasn't an incentive to look elsewhere, to look for anybody else's vaccines. I think at the beginning there were something like 150 different companies in the United States even looking at vaccines for the virus, but most of them have kind of fallen by the wayside because the messenger RNA really was the one that was developed most quickly and was so successful.
Well, when Kim Jong-un comes out with his own, you'll all be laughing out of the other side of your face at that one.
And you mean his own?
His own. He's working on it himself in his own laboratory.
Sure he is.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's gotten probably a dose of Pfizer or Moderna. Somebody smuggled it in just for him. The rest of the country, they'll just die of COVID. But
right.
I'm sure he got the best.
Yeah, go find yourself some water to inject. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Yeah. Dr. Norem, as always, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the expertise. And, you've been a clarifying voice for a lot of us throughout all of this. And we appreciate you showing up with us every Monday. If you're not doing anything, we'll be back again next Monday, too.
All right. Well, hope to see you then.
We will. That's Dr. Dennis Norem from Mercy Health.